pass rush is the single most important factor in creating a great defense in Madden 23. And that's why you need to understand the three main concepts that will create a fantastic pass rush. These three concepts are ability overrides, stats and traits, and blocker resistance / pass rush points. And without further ado, let's just get straight into it. Now, I want to talk about ability overrides and why I call them overrides. So what these ability overrides are the abilities edge threat or double or nothing. And the reason I call them overrides is because they override any statistical discrepancies, or in general, if your defensive lineman is much worse than the offensive lineman, then he would get blocked. But the override makes it so that he always gets the shed. And that's what the double or nothing and edge threat ability do. Now, you can run these abilities on their own. However, you won't get the shed every time when the abilities are not together. So if you have double or nothing and edge threat on a defender, so in this case, I have both of those abilities on Lawrence Taylor here. As you can see, he's got a superstar under him. And Alan Faneca does not have edge protector and secure protector. And I will go into that, it's super important, right? So in this case, you'll notice that I will get shedded every single time by Lawrence Taylor. He'll always get that exact animation. There won't be any other animations that will happen. It's also important that you don't crash out. As you can see, if I were to crash out on this play with my defensive lineman, you'll notice that the shed is just much weaker. He doesn't even get picked up, or he does get picked up, I should say. And despite Alan Faneca not having abilities, crashing up just kind of screwed it over completely. So remember, you can't crash up. I wouldn't recommend crashing left or crashing down or crashing left or right. Crashing down is by far the best way to get this to occur every time. So that's just something to avoid. That's super important, right? But you're gonna get this shed every single time. As long as you're crashing down, a lot of the time, the blitzes or the plays you call stock have them crashing down. So definitely recommend checking that out before you call the play, right? And if it's not crashing down, just crash down. It'll make sure you get that animation. But remember, there are three conditions to which this ability combination won't work. Number one, which you'll face a lot, is that secure / edge protector is on the offensive lineman. So if Alan Faneca here had secure or edge protector, I'm probably butchering his name, secure or edge protector, Lawrence Taylor wouldn't shed at all relative to his abilities at all. So that's kind of what that does. The other case where it wouldn't work is if Lawrence Taylor or your double or nothing edge threat didn't have 2 pass rush points, at least 2 pass rush points. So in this case, we're in practice mode. He has unlimited pass rush points, it seems, right? But if he has less than 2, then he won't be able to perform that dominant animation, and he just won't shed pretty much at all. So I recommend running abilities like defensive rally or instant rebate to make sure your pass rush points are accumulating. I know you can get a couple of them for free or for 0 AP, or if you have something like Richard Seymour and Mutt right now, he has defensive rally for free. So on 3rd and 4th downs, you get an extra pass rush point just to make sure that it comes in more consistently, right? So the other case, of course, is crashing up. You do not want to crash up. As you can see, when I crash up, in this case, it's crashed up. You'll notice that he just doesn't get that animation. He has to go to the inside, right? And he just disengaged there, right? But regardless, it makes it so he doesn't get that dominant animation. That's pretty much concludes the ability override. I definitely recommend double or nothing and edge threat on your defensive lineman if you're not playing a lot of secure protectors. Even if you have them online, like in online head-to-head or Mutt, for really cheap. Like I know a couple players get it for like 2 AP or 3 AP. Like Bruce Smith gets edge threat elite and double or nothing for 3 AP. You can really dominate your opponents with it, especially if they can't afford or don't have the secure / edge protector abilities. Not a lot of people talk about this, and that's stats and traits and how they play together to determine a pass rush animation. And those stats and traits determine not only what moves you perform, but how well you perform those moves. But not a lot of people pay attention to the traits, right? So I'll kind of give an example to illustrate how they actually work. So in this case, we have 93 overall Lawrence Taylor. And Lawrence Taylor is a fantastic Madden Ultimate Team card, and you could ask absolutely anybody, they're probably using him. Or if they're not using him, they're using someone else that's not as good. That's the best way I could play. But the reason Lawrence Taylor is so good is not because he has 90 finesse move and 92 power move, but it's because not only does he have those, but he also performs every single move he could perform. So there's 2 categories of move, of course. There's the power move and finesse move, and they kind of separate into 3 categories, which is the pass rush bull rush move, the pass rush spin move, and the pass rush swim move, right? Now those are the 3 moves. The spin and the swim move are considered finesse move, and the bull rush move is considered, well, a bull rush, power move, right? So those are what is considered. But since he performs all of those moves, and he's able to perform them, and has the stats to perform them, as you can see with finesse move and power move, that makes him a really good card. So when he performs, let's say, a bull rush move, he has 92 power move to go along with it, right? And when he performs, let's say, a finesse move, he has 90 finesse move to go along with it. And that's why he's a great card. Now, another great example of a great Ultimate Team card is Dexter Lawrence. Now, why is Dexter Lawrence such a great card? He's a little expensive, but he's still a fantastic card. Well, the reason Dexter Lawrence is great is because he has really high power move. But as a player, you look, oh, he has 81 finesse move. Why would I want Dexter Lawrence at my interior if he only has 81 finesse move? What happens when he tries to perform a swim or a spin move? Great question. He doesn't perform swim and spin moves. So since he can't perform a spin move, as you can see, pass rush spin move, no, and he can't perform a swim move, he only goes for the bull rush moves. And as you can see, he has 95 power move. Now, another thing I want to mention and kind of clear up, there's two other stats that matter, right? They don't matter as much as the strict power move and finesse move, but they matter. And those stats are strength and weight. So in this case, Dexter Lawrence is 342 pounds. So he's going to be heavier than 95% of the offensive linemen in the game. So he automatically wins in the weight category. On the other hand, he also has 94 strength, which is also matters in most cases. There were old pie graphs released in Madden 21. I unfortunately don't have them anymore, and they were more for run sheds. But it was more along the lines of strength was 25% of the engagement ratio, so it mattered 25% of the determinant, right, of who wins, right? And weight mattered another 25%, right? So I also really like Dexter Lawrence because he has high strength, high weight, and he only performs power moves. So that 81 finesse move that he has is completely irrelevant. Now, another great example of a player that I like on the edge is Javon Curse. Now, why do I like Javon Curse? Of course, 92 speed, that's great. 93 power move, also great. So if he had all of the moves, he'd be even better than Lawrence Taylor. However, he doesn't, right? But it doesn't necessarily matter. And the reason it doesn't matter, it almost makes him better, is because he has 96 finesse move. Of course, still really, really good. Probably the top end in the game. Like, there won't be many offensive linemen with the pass block to counter a 96 finesse move. So in this case, as you can see, he only performs the spin move and the swim move. And because he performs those exclusively, that means he's only going to be utilizing that 96 finesse move in those animations. And that's why he's such a great card to have on the edge. Now, I have all of these cards in MUT, and I'm going to showcase them in practice mode. As you can see, I have these players in MUT practice mode right now: Lawrence Taylor, Dexter Lawrence, and of course, Javon Curse, right? Now, I do want to note that they do not have double or nothing in the edge threat, and they are not going against secure protectors. However, secure protectors are very common, so just remember, on the first shed, the secure protector will likely stop it from shedding. However, any sheds after that, it will be functional, right? So these tests will be what you see in game, but likely on the second shed if your opponent is using secure protectors. But without further ado, let's just go through our first test. So in this case, I'm just going to snap the ball, and as you can see, we got a shed from the right side, Dexter Lawrence. Now let's see exactly what type of shed we got from Dexter Lawrence on the right side. So in this case, I think he got a one-on-one with Hilgenberg right here. So in this case, as you can see, Dexter Lawrence performs a rip move, right? A rip move is considered a power move. So in this case, he performs the rip move, sheds him, and of course, I get sacked, right? So that's another great example of Dexter Lawrence being good. So let's see who else we can see to make a good move. Okay, perfect. There we go, Javon Curse and Lawrence Taylor, right? Let's see what move they did in this case. So right here, Lawrence Taylor performs just a bull rush move. This is just a bull rush shed, just gets around him. But more importantly, as you can see, our friend here, Javon Curse, performs a spin move, a finesse spin move just to get around the edge and sack my quarterback. And as you can see, they only perform the moves relative to their traits. Now, Lawrence Taylor will perform anything. Dexter Lawrence, as you can see, Dexter Lawrence right there with the power move, right? With that 96 power move, he just bullies Hilgenberg on the right. So in this case, he just throws him to the side, completely runs through the line, an easy sack. And as you can see, Lawrence Taylor opts for a power move again, and Javon Curse opts for a spin move. Since they have good stats and they have the traits to be able to utilize their good stats, these are fantastic cards, and I definitely recommend you consider what I mentioned, as it'll help you in draft champions, ultimate team, franchise mode, and even setting your depth chart in online head-to-head regs. In this part of the video, we're going over pass rush points and blocker resistance. Now, pass rush points, very simply put, just determine whether or not your player, your defensive lineman, can make a pass rush move. In this case, as you can see, one pass rush move, he can perform 3, 2, and 1, right? Now, they will replenish during plays. If they're off the field, they get a pass rush point, or if they don't go for a pass rush move, they get a pass rush point. Every play, you get one pass rush point back, right? If you use one and lose one, you're gonna stay at 1 consistently, right? So keep that in mind. Now, in this case, as you can see, Jerry Hughes has 1 pass rush point. So if he doesn't win on his first animation, he will lose. And we can see Lopez has, or Collins has 3, Lopez has 2, Greenard has 1, right? So if he doesn't win on the first move, he will lose. Now, the next thing you want to pay attention to is blocker resistance, which is like how much your offensive line has learned from the defensive line from playing them consistently, right? So in this case, when you're the defensive player and you notice that Hughes Jr., or the player blocking him, number 72, has a lot of blocker resistance on him, there's a chance that Hughes won't be able to shed it because Lucas, I think that's Abraham Lucas, the right tackle, was able to block him consistently, right? Or he learned from his mistakes blocking him previously. So he will do a better job at blocking Jerry Hughes. So that's just kind of a quick overview of what they do. So blocker resistance accumulates the longer you leave a player on an offensive lineman. So that's why when you're playing Ultimate Team or whatever game mode you might be playing, you want to constantly be switching your players. So in this case, when you press the triangle button on PlayStation or the Y button on Xbox, you'll see that you can just switch players out. So let's say you wanted to put Hughes on the other side, right? So when you put Hughes on the other side, you'll notice that the player, when you click onto Hughes to check the block resistance, he has zero blocker resistance to Hughes. And he also has all of his pass rush points because it was the 2-minute warning. So every timeout or break in the game will kind of replenish your blocker not your blocker resistance, your pass rush points, right? And you also want your players to be constantly flip-flopped or swapped so that the offensive line doesn't have time to accumulate blocker resistance. So in this case, because none of my offensive line has blocker resistance and all of my players has pass rush points, it would be incredibly unlikely for me to be able to even get a ton of time on this play. And as you can see, 3 of the defensive linemen on the field, Hughes, Lopez, and I believe Greenard, all shed. So in this case, you notice Jerry Hughes was able to win on his spin move. Lopez won on his power move rip. And of course, I believe Greenard also won on just a rip move, right? So in this case, they won because for 2 reasons. They had pass rush points to use, and the offensive line didn't have blocker resistance. Now, as you can see, after only 2 plays, the play I used to get the first down and the play that I got sacked on, you can tell that the blocker resistance on the offensive line is accumulated, right? So in this case, the offensive line should do a little bit of a better job holding the defensive line and preventing them from winning on the first shed. However, since it's not a lot of blocker resistance, you'll notice that, well, they still get shedded, right? So you don't necessarily have to swap every play, but you have to do so when you notice the block resistance is starting to accumulate. So that's something you have to pay close attention to. Okay, so now that it's a little bit later in the game, you can see that the blocker resistance is starting to stack up. So in this case, the offensive line is starting to generate enough blocker resistance points to make a difference versus our defensive line. And you can also notice that the pass rush points on our defensive line are still pretty good, right? Because pass rush points work differently than blocker resistance. So now when I run a play, I'll actually get a little bit more time because my offensive line has blocker resistance. So they will be able to hold just a little bit longer. Of course, our right guard is still very weak. I believe the Seahawks offensive line has a 60 overall right guard. I tried my best to make them at least decent, but they still get shedded like that. However, if you focus on the other side of the line, this defensive lineman tried to perform a rip move on Abraham Lucas, but because Abraham Lucas had a little bit of blocker resistance, he was able to hold him up. On the left side, we also have the double team being held up quite clean. So it won the double team animation, and then he eventually won on the left guard. And then on the left side, if focus on our left tackle, a pass rush move is tried to be made, like he tried to make a spin move, but he lost. And the reason he's losing these animations is because blocker resistance is allowing the offensive line to learn from their mistakes, for instance, and play better. But if you notice, when I do something like this, let's say I flip the DTs and I also flip the defensive ends on this next play, you'll notice that there will be a lot less blocker resistance. So in this case, there is still a tiny bit of block resistance. Jerry Hughes, there's a lot of block resistance on him. But on the left side, Green has no block resistance on him, and there's very little block resistance on Greener. So you can expect the left side of the field, or the left side defensive lineman, to shed very well. So in this case, Greener dominantly wins the spin move, as opposed to Hughes on the other side, who ended up losing the spin move on his animation. So in this case, you can tell quite quickly that Greenard ended up winning that animation and getting the sack. And that's because the offensive line didn't have blocker resistance. And that's what's super important. If you're looking for an ability to use to make it so blocker resistance accumulates slower so you don't have to switch players constantly, I definitely recommend Unpredictable, and I know a lot of players in Madden Ultimate Team can get Unpredictable for 0 AP. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you get 10 times better sheds, better pass rush, and your defensive life is way easier because you're picking the best players, moving them around, and also utilizing the best abilities to get those sheds and create better defenses for yourself. Now, if you enjoyed, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and if you're looking for a great blitz to kind of work with your great defensive line, make sure to check out this video right here.